So
Well, before you go on, can somebody help me figure out how to turn the volume up?
on your laptop keyboard, there should be a volume.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm on my Mac, and so mine is at the top bar. And
I got it.
okay. Ooh, and it keeps asking me if I want to assign a new host. So that must mean that one of you really wants to teach this class. No, I'm just kidding.
So how do we watch you on Zoom for your other class? How do we watch you for your other class?
Oh, wait, hold on one second. Hello? Yeah? Yes.
Bonnie, have you done any work since last week?
Yeah, we're on. Did you not get the Zoom?
No, I've been getting my supplies together and clean my studio. So I'm getting all ready.
Okay, I'm gonna say
Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You cleaned yours in 1 week. That's good.
Well, no, I've got to reorganize it tomorrow morning, but yeah, I'm all ready.
Sorry, you guys, hold on one second. Okay, hold on. We're still, wait, Patty. Oh, okay. We're getting one more person. Sorry, we're waiting for Patty. She's in Seattle. Hold on, Patty.
So, Joy, where are you from?
Calgary, Alberta.
Oh my goodness. Pooja?
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Brooklyn, New York, but I'm originally from India. I've been here for the last 25 years now.
Wait, this is a diverse group of people from around the country.
Whoa, what
It's kind of fun. That's one of the nice things about doing Zoom.
It is, yeah. Have you all taken workshops with Leah?
No.
This is my first one.
So how do you find out about these? Like, how did you find out about Leah?
On Instagram.
Yeah,
I'm listening to all, you guys better be saying nice things about me because I can hear everything you're saying. No, just kidding.
Well, we are, because I'm local. I know who you are.
I know. I'm just teasing you.
Everyone's from around the country. I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I'm so sorry, you guys. So, okay, let me just make sure Patty's on because then we can get rocking and rolling. That was so cute. It was nice to hear where you guys were all from. And I know some of you ordered prints from me. I know, Pam, I made sure yours got out to you. I was like so stressed. I was like, you guys, we gotta go to the post office. Come on, we gotta go to the post office. Like,
yes, we gotta use the post office. That's right.
Yeah. Hurry up, someone's gotta go.
Everything came in yesterday. I just got everything I needed at the last minute. So.
Oh, that's great. And yeah, I'm glad you got everything from Fine Art Store too. That's great. They're really nice people.
They do not have a user-friendly website though.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe not in ordering, but did you get it? I know. I send you.
Well, I had some
the
problems
subject
with
heading says, "Here you go."
And
I just sent it again.
And I called them, and they were a few days ago. They were super.
What happened?
I just received it this morning.
Oh, they were so nice on the phone because I put in some of your SKU numbers that they didn't take.
All right, hold on.
So I called them.
It's okay. Hold on. Let me see. I know. I don't know how that happens. Okay, let me try again. I'm going to try to re-forward the one. I'm just going to try to forward it to you. I don't know why Zoom doesn't say the time. It's so weird. The Zoom meetings, when I look back at the emails, it doesn't say what time. So I'm going to send you this one. This is a forward of a forward. It's from me to you. And it doesn't say the time of the meeting, but try that. I'm sending it now. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't. It's 814-197-43277. Does anybody know the Zoom number of our meeting?
Yeah, it's 831
831.
48
Okay.
64
Can you? Oh, this is not the meeting then. Hold on.
7118.
Hold on. It's just asking where. Come on now.
I think if you just give her the number and the password
Try this. Yeah,
verbally,
you want to do that? Go ahead. Tell me the. Why can't I see the number?
I don't know. But I think if you just give it to her and then she can enter it and she'll get in.
Okay, ready? We're gonna give you the number. Ready? Go ahead.
The ID number,
Mm-hmm.
831
831
48
48
64
64
71
71
18.
118.
and the password.
Yeah, go to Zoom and enter that. Meeting ID number 831-48647118. Thank you, you guys are so helpful. And then you need a password.
14 85
148547.
47.
Try it. And I'm going to try to find this email and forward it to you too. I'm going to go into my other email. So we'll have both. I feel like, okay. All right. Call me when you're in. Well, actually, if I don't see you in a minute. Okay. She's trying. Hold on. Okay. I'm going to send her. I have another. I invited myself twice too, just in case this happened. But okay. Let's see. Now, where's Patty's email? And still no Maya, huh? I talked to Maya earlier. She comes, I guess she has little kids. So I think it's sometimes she's dealing with her children.
With Patty, is she doing it with her laptop or on the phone?
I don't know.
Because the phone, you have different information. Well, it's the same information, but there's a dial-up number.
Oh,
Well,
yeah, it's weird too how it says like, yeah, I've never.
I never did that before. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
But that would be the other thing, if she's trying to do it on her phone. Maybe
Yeah, I don't see her coming in yet, but let's hope. Let's see. I'm just gonna check my email one more time, see if because I sent it to her 2 different ways now. Oh, also, I wanted to give you guys an FYI that Renee from my afternoon class is going to set up a Facebook group for this class. And one of the things I was talking about earlier today was that we're going to do 3 lessons on encaustic starting from the beginning. Next week is going to be all about wax medium applications. So today we're going to be talking about prints, print prep is what I call it, underpainting, drawing on the print, preparing it to start putting the wax on. Next week will be all encaustic medium techniques, and there are many, many, many of those, of course. And then the week after that will be focused on color, so methods of adding color to the wax. So 1, 2, 3. Oh, yay, you guys, we did it. We're so good. We're so good. We did a little dance. We're so good. Actually, yay. I still think Patty.
Hello.
Patty. We can't go without you now. We can't go anywhere without you, Patty.
I'm so sorry.
It is okay. All good. But oh, you know why? I actually have you on my attendance sheet as in the afternoon class. So that would be part of the problemo.
Gotcha.
That would be a major problem to have you in the wrong class. So I'm so sorry. So now you're in the right class, and a little group effort there. So what I was just talking about a couple things. One, oh, Patty, I don't have video on you though.
Okay.
if you want to add, it'd be nice.
What the heck happened? I got out somehow, but I still hear you.
Oh, I don't know. You got to zoom back in. You got to like
All right.
go back into the
Yeah.
cyber tunnel.
Share,
Go back.
share video.
We got to go back into Willy Wonka land, like Mike TV.
Looks like Patty's recording. Is that you recording or her?
It's me I'm recording. Patty's
There.
not recording. I don't think Patty's.
Tell her to go to the top and to share video.
Can you hear us, Patty?
And I hear you. I'm looking
Oh, it should
for
be at the bottom. Mine's at the bottom.
bottom.
Oh, mine's on the top of my iPad, so, okay.
There we
mine is on my,
go.
there she is.
Hello.
Yes.
It took a village.
Hello.
It's very, yeah, it did take a village. I'm sorry. The light behind me is very distracting.
So I only dropped my Zoom call one time in my earlier lesson, so that was good. And everybody was like frozen. And then I panicked, and then I got back, and I was like, "Oh my God, you guys were frozen!" I think I kept talking for at least like 5 minutes. Probably did not even notice that they were all frozen. And but like I said, I am recording. Oh, and now you get to listen to 15 minutes of us trying to get on Zoom, which
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine. Oh my God, it's not your fault. But just fast forward the first 15 minutes of the YouTube video, because you'll be like, oh my God. So what I was trying to say was, yes, I'm recording. It actually works really well. Zoom puts them in an MP4 video. I put the MP4 video on YouTube, and then I send you the link. And I'm going to make them public, but only for a week. And then I'm going to delete them. And I'm really just doing that I'm doing that just to protect our group, and also just to keep moving forward. But that gives you a week to watch it as many times as you want. If you really feel like you need it longer than a week, you can email me. I mean, it's no big deal. I don't want people pirating my videos. So like I was saying too, we're going to do 3 classes. We're going to focus on all of our panel prep, panel ideas, works on paper. And then we're going to take those into the next week's class and do just wax medium. We're going to learn smooth wax medium coating, textured. We're going to learn to layer wax medium. We're going to learn problem solving with wax medium, drawing in it, marking it, coating it. And then we're going to focus on color in week 3. And that'll include encaustic paint, pigment sticks, and some other things that don't feel compelled to buy. I really wanted to keep the class affordable. And it saddens me sometimes that people feel like there are multiple obstacles between them and encaustics, so that they feel like they can't do it at home, or that it's too expensive to set up. So I feel like if I got the supply list down to $150 and the class a couple $100, that it would make it more feasible. And that's also why I offered to print for people, because I know that some people don't have access to a lab or a local printer, because most local printers closed, most local labs closed. So now we're looking at either owning our own printers and buying paper and buying ink, or finding a good place to outsource. And a lot of the online labs are fine. You just kind of have to weed through which ones you like and which are the highest quality for the best price. And we can talk about that. Because of my professional photography background, I have a lot of experience with most of the labs nationwide in the US. So I can help with that, and printers too, and papers. So I wanted to introduce this book, and I wanted to talk a little bit about encaustic safety just for a minute. And what I really love about this book, it's called The Art of Encaustic Painting, and it's by Joanne Matera. And she is the founder of the Encaustic Conference, which happens every June in Provincetown. Of course, it did not happen this year. But it's really nice to think that there's like this whole encaustic world and there really is this, there's artists, there's workshops, there's museums, there's encaustic centers, there's conferences, there's even encaustic camp, there's encaustic sculpture, and even artist residencies available in encaustic. So it's really nice. And even in my experience, as I've spent more time doing encaustics, things have just gotten bigger. It's like growing. And I think more people are loving the medium and enjoying it and sharing it. So that's great. What I wanted to show you was that there's a little part in this book about basic safety and fanage, basic ventilation techniques. So for me, even just a window with a fan in it, even if you had a smaller window and just a fan that can reverse, so it can either bring in air or pull out air. It's like fairly typical. They're usually like white and they can go right in the window. That's fine. Even a regular box fan in a window is fine. An open door is helpful. And if you had any type of ceiling fan or other fan, and if you had just a stand-up fan, you might want to put it next to the hot plate so it's blowing the fumes of the paint like towards an open window, right? If you don't have a draw out fan or a duct. I wanted to talk a little bit about toxicity. I don't personally believe that encaustic paints are terribly toxic. I also don't believe for the skin that they're that toxic. However, even the wax medium does create tiny particles of tiny particles of wax or fiber or whatever. And if you're breathing them in your mouth, you are going to be breathing them in. I mean, Philadelphia probably has a lot of grit and stuff in our air anyway, because we're an industrial city. So, you know, certain places are cleaner. It's not the type of fiber that's toxic. It just is an alien form that comes off the wax no matter what you do. So any type of air circulation just prevents that. You could also wear your like lightweight N95 or your, you know, whatever mask you're wearing for COVID if you feel like you don't want to consume. And certain colors, you guys, are more toxic than other colors in caustics, right? And if you keep the temperatures lower, they're also less toxic. So I just wanted to give that like blanket statement. I've been doing encaustics for years. I do have a large studio. So, and I have some fans. I have a big actually extracting air duct, but I honestly just don't really use it that much because it's so noisy. It's only when I'm like really heavy in the painting. So I wanted to quickly give everybody a little tour of my studio, which I thought might be kind of fun. So behind me, this is right now my art supply table. So I know, doesn't that, it looks like, look at Pam's face. She's like, woohoo!
That looks like all the toys.
I know. So we're going to use all of these toys at one point. And this has been like, and Candace probably knows this, but for most of my career, I've been driving around and teaching at multiple locations. So for me to have all of my art supplies on one table in one place is like so exciting, because usually like they're in a box or in a suitcase or in my car, mostly in my car.
A big suitcase.
Yeah, big gray suitcase, right, Candace? Okay, so this is, behind me is actually a really cool thing. This is a large stainless tray. It's kind of like an upside down cradle panel. And stainless is awesome for working with encaustic. So if you want to do any type of pouring wax over panels, or if you want a surface that you can cleanly scrape up extra wax off the edges or anything like that, stainless is amazing. Even if you bought like a fairly large cookie sheet, or you had any type of flat stainless steel around, it makes for an amazing work surface. Like my dream is to someday have one of those awesome butcher block kitchen tables wrapped with stainless with like a tiny little like heating element in it, so that I can just like have kind of like a fry-later, like a chef's like fry station, like breakfast guy. I just have it for my wax. It'd be so cool. All right, so you guys are going to be lucky enough to hear me talk about these panels today a little bit. These are my 48 by 60 encaustic paintings I'm working on right now. that need to be finished in the next 3 weeks. So if I seem a little stressed out, that might be why. And one of the things I wanted to talk about with them is that I seamed them together. So I did not, and I repeat, I did not glue a 48 by 60 photograph. I actually divided it into 16 by 20 panels of 9, and then and then glued them together. I also started with works that I've already completed, which is kind of interesting. I got curated into this show, and then was then told that they needed to be like super big, like 48. I was like, oh, okay. So that's how that's going together, and I think it'll be good. It's going to be good. This is my work table. So I have my prints here. I have a bunch of panels, and I have my my hot plates, right? My paper towels, my stencils. Okay. And my studio is behind my house. So I have electricity out here. I have like a carriage house. I do not have plumbing, but we have probably 3,500 square feet. And I split the space with my husband. I've worked in a split space with my hubby for 26 years. So he has one side and I have one side, boy side, girl side. Yep. And so he's got all his machinery over there and whatever, all his stuff for building motorcycles. And I have all my art stuff. The leather and lace. I'm the lacy side. Okay. So any questions so far? I'm still just looking for, I'll just pause every once in a while. Also, if you have a question, feel free to like raise your hand. Nobody needs to be muted unless you just want to be muted. That's fine. And if if you want me to repeat something, that's fine. Either way. Okay.
I do have a question.
Yes.
Your workspace, did you cover that with brown paper?
I do cover my workspace with brown paper. What I was saying about this, like the stainless surface, is that if you're waxing, you can just take the heat gun and liquefy or use a scraping tool and scrape off all the wax off a stainless surface. If you're using paper, it's going to stick to the paper, and you can't really reuse it. You can't recycle it.
The last station you showed us, it looked like it was covered in paper. So that's a different.
This is my table surface is covered in paper because I tend to get really messy, and then I just can't take it anymore. So I just roll it up and throw it away when it gets too messy. Because I just paint, I end up painting right off the table or mixing my palette right off the table, or something like that. And then I'm just like, I'm just gonna start over. It's too messy. I need to clear my head. So I just throw the paper away or flip it over and then throw it away. And the stainless is for really when I pour, and we'll talk about pouring next week. But I always tell people, if they want to paint on a cookie tray, like if you could buy a fairly large cookie tray, and the point of that is if the wax runs over the side, you can easily scrape it off and recycle it without it getting dirty. And dirty wax is a thing. Like it's a big thing in encaustic painting, kind of like dirty paint or mixed paint or dirty water versus clean mixing water. So I like to paint with what I call my mud, and we'll talk about mud probably in week 3. But some people want all their colors separated and no contamination between colors or brushes, and we can talk about that a lot. And it's kind of a big deal. And getting like dirt, like wax, like it's sticky, and it just attaches to anything near it. So if it gets on your paper, it's going to pick up all the hair, dirt, dog hair, dust, which we have a lot of here because we just do. We have, spider, I have things in my studio that are just part of my studio, including rust and dust and dog hair for sure. Okay, but that was a good question. So yeah, brown paper. You could also work on freezer paper. And so actually this is a great conversation because freezer paper is kind of like that happy in between. stainless, which is expensive and hard to find, and brown paper, which is absorb. You know, I don't like this word. And dirty. So freezer paper is clean, and the wax will come right off of it. It won't stick to it, and it'll be easier to maintain. And it's also good for for oil paint palette. And you can buy it in large sheets and big rolls because you could find it at a restaurant supply store. Okay. So I wanted to start out with this little trick, and it's like a funny little trick, and it kind of goes back to the history of how I started in encaustics. So I'm going to show you a fun little thing with my phone and a piece of cut right kitchen wax paper. So my background is in black and white photography and really darkroom photography. And it was in college that I first started to play around with adding papers and things to the surfaces of my photographs. So the first thing that I added was wax paper. And what I want to talk about is sort of the connection between like this, why do we add wax to photographs? Like, why does it work? And why do we like it so much? And what is it about it that we like so much? And so the wax paper kind of sums up for me all of those questions. So you can see I put the wax paper over the photo here. And it automatically looks beautiful. In this very first image, the wax paper is very close to the photo, right? But look what happens if I start to pull the wax paper away from the photo. The photograph gets blurrier and blurrier, right? And it actually kind of changes the focus of the photo, right? So the cool thing about this is that it sort of imitates exactly what happens with the physicality of wax over photography, is that the thicker the wax over the photograph, the blurrier and more softened the detail of the photograph is, right? So that there's these like interesting similarities between the way the wax paper acts over the photograph, the way the wax actually acts over the photograph, and then also sort of how the camera acts with like depth of field issues. So this is a really good example right here where you can so clearly see how the distance of the wax paper completely blurs the sharpness of the photo, and then you just start to did you see that? Isn't that just so beautiful? I mean, you could just like look at this all day. And then what's really cool is that if you're trying to figure out for yourself which of your images are gonna look good with wax on them, go ahead to the kitchen drawer, get yourself a piece of kitchen like wax paper, and just come out, just lay it on there and start playing around with it. Start lifting it up, you know, pulling it back, and take your iPhone, right, or your camera, and just take a couple pictures, like pull it up from the left, right, and take a picture, and then pull it up from the right and take a picture, right? So you're obscuring the view from the lower right-hand corner to the up, then take it right, you know, from the top. So it's like already I'm doing like a little test, like 4 little tests that are basically showing me kind of what this image is going to look like and how it's going to react to a semi-translucent coat of something on top of it, right? And then the other thing I like to do is once I have this image, then I can go into sort of the apps on my phone. And if I go into like auto, it's going to add more contrast. So then it's going to start to show me if I added a little bit more color, a little bit more black, right? This image would start to look like this, right? So I could do those things with paint, right? So I'm already sort of like using technology and using these little tests to kind of tell me what I might be finding along the path as I move forward, right? I could also possibly even look at it like, oh, you know, would it look better in black and white? And then would it look better cropped? These are other things that you can play around with your phone. So I use my phone and I photograph a lot of my work as I'm working on it in the studio. And it helps me to sort of get that step away and be able to process what's happening with my hands, right? So sometimes like your hands and your body and the materials are bossing you around. And then you can just say, whoa, wait, I need to look at this. And you can take a picture, walk away, and then you can make like more, you know, legit decisions about what needs to happen next. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the little wax paper thing. My friend Jennifer Thorensen, who actually also lives in Arizona, who I've known for years, she's a wonderful artist. She's been playing around with wax paper and wax paper even over the screen. But it's a wonderful mixed media material, and it has like a little spotted cloudiness to it that's also really beautiful. It's like feathering. Mm-hmm. So it's just like an incredible medium. And it kind of makes sense how the curve out of the wax paper goes back to the camera and the lens and the wide open shallow depth of field lens. Also goes back to view camera with tilt and shift applications. It also refers back to the pictorialists like Edward Steichen, who coated his landscape photographs with beeswax as a preservative, right? So all these things are just like nice little reminders that the work that I'm doing, the work that I'm sharing, the work that you want to do all sort of makes sense in this sort of larger experience of, you know, creating beautiful, dreamy photographs, right? Okay. So I'm going to put my wax paper to the side. Oh, wax paper also makes excellent under surfaces for tables and painter's palettes.
Okay.
Okay. Also, you could wrap your art in wax paper too at the end, if you wanted. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start talking about some of the techniques that I like to use on my photographs before I wax them. And I'm going to start out with, today or tonight with mark making. And I should have black, but I don't. I have blue, a blue marker. You could also be used you could also use a Sharpie or any colored Sharpie. You could also use paint pens if you have paint pens. Even those metallic like marker pens could be super special and cool. The idea is really just to pick like 4 of your favorite mark making tools just that you like. And so I always like a number 2 pencil, a piece of chalk, my Stabilo, this is a Stabilo woody crayon. You could also use one of those beautiful Chinese, they're called China markers, but they're wax crayons, the ones that unravel. Those are also really cool. So I like to draw on my photos to get started, and I'm going to go ahead and put your view on my photo so you can watch me draw. And I don't really discern like which ones I draw on. I just kind of do what I feel like and start drawing. So one of the things that I like to draw is what I call the outside line. So I might just take a pencil or a black crayon and sort of what I call darken the outside line, right? So that's like anywhere where there's a shadow of an object, right? So it could be any part of her body, any of these lines in the fabric, any of these just sort of dark lines. I sort of love them because they define the object in a space, right? So any of the centers of the flowers, any of the spaces in between the flowers, I sort of use the black, right? And then maybe especially because I have a little bit of botanical theme in here, look, any of these shadow areas over here. So I do love like leafy shadows, and I can really make them pop, right? As if I was just sort of adding contrast in Photoshop or something like that. I'm gonna just go ahead and use a pencil, a black crayon, a blue crayon, or my chalk, right? So the difference between the wax, of course, and the chalk is is blendy, right? The wax is stiff and I can't really blend it. but the chalk, I can take my finger and I can blend it. So I can make it go from dark to light. So see here, I can create a gradient with the chalk by adding it dark on one side and then pulling it with my finger and spreading it out, right? So this to me is just like enjoyable. I like to start to think of these like shapes as sort of beautiful entities or little like dramas or something. I don't know, just sort of dancing around here. I also like to think about positive and negative space. So like this is a big space right here, right? And this could also become, I could transform this space. This is also a space that I could think about turning into like a huge dress, right? So this is just sort of how my mind works, is that once I start drawing on it, I can sort of step off of reality and start thinking about abstraction and sort of how am I going to, or where am I going to elaborate on the story and make it creative, right? Also, the chalk could be used on its side, you guys, like this, right? As a rubbing tool, as a mid-tone grayer, right? And then you can use your finger to spread it. Okay, and I also already started that sort of like outside the frame line down here. I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep the frame or not keep the frame, but I can start to think about that. Does somebody have a question?
Yeah, so Leah, at this point, is it all black, or do you tend to use the chalk pastels with different colors, or?
That's actually a wonderful question, and that's a really, really good question. So I was gonna stick. I mean, for me, I don't stick to one or the other. Part of the problem for me is if I get too colorful right at the beginning, I feel like it limits me tremendously later in the process about color.
Yeah.
So this is actually, it's funny you said this, because this is actually an example of a chalk painted photograph.
Right.
And I was thinking exactly like you were thinking. I was like, why am I only using black chalk? Like, I have all these beautiful colored chalks. It's translucent and powdery, and it's so fun and freeing and like lightweight. I was thinking about all these beautiful things about chalk. And so I started painting this whole thing with chalk and rubbing it in. And I love this like lemony yellow. But then I realized I can't add wax to that.
Yeah.
So I had a great time painting it with colored chalk, but I knew if I added wax to it, basically the wax would take all those colors, mix them together into mud, and then what was I gonna add on top? Like, what color was I gonna put over hot pink? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Besides more hot pink, but then I just couldn't really see the point of that. And you know what? Look, we can do a test. I also
That's
think
why
that,
I tend to get lost. It's like, the workflow. It's like, oh, why did I do that? Now I'm stuck, or now it just looks.
well, I mean, here, look, here's our test, right? So here's the wax paper over the color. And I mean, like, it just, I don't know. I'd rather just keep it black and white, add the wax, and then add the color. Like, I just felt like this was fine and beautiful, just as a hand-colored chalk photograph, And I don't ever like get up, I was like, I did it. I thought like you were thinking. I'm like, this is so fun. This is so freeing. It's so pretty. Chalk is great. Let's add all these colors. But then it did kind of like for the workflow of an encaustic photo, I don't personally like to put too many colors in the underpinnings. I like to keep them black and white because that allows me to make better and more clear choices about color when it matters. Does that make sense?
So I have a question. That's with the chalk would become mud, but if it's oils like for hand painting, hand coloring.
Oh, like Marshall's oils?
Yeah. Does that turn
Absolutely. Marshall's oils are fine, and
They don't turn to mud.
they need to dry. You need to apply them, and you
Right.
need to give them a good 24 hours to dry. You
Okay.
could also hand tone the photographs with watercolor, which like Candace and Bonnie just spent some time with me hand painting photographs with watercolors. I mean, all of these beautiful, they're called, tinting or hand painting photographic, these processes are incredible. I mean, I could take this photo and I could like put it in, paint it with tea. I could tone it brown. I mean, there's a lot of things.
Right.
I tend not to do those things because I know that my intention is to wax it.
Yeah. Afterwards, you put the color after.
So right. And I think just through my experience of wanting to have the go button and like the like this is it on target path is just from my experience, it's best to just use black or monochromatic tones in the beginning, gray, blue, black, brown, white, ivory, like those kind of earthy, black, gray grayish things in the beginning. And then once you have that layer of encaustic medium on, then the sky's the limit for the color, right?
Okay. All right.
Now, I wouldn't, and this is not a situation where if you do add color with chalk or underneath or water, it's not bad. It's not going to make it's not a mistake.
Yeah.
It's just think about it this way. If you're layering something, right, and you put the color at the bottom layer,
What is it? Yeah.
you can't go back and change it.
Right.
You're going to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you're going to have to deal with another color laying on top of that color.
Okay.
Or so really you're going to be putting that same color in the end on it.
Okay.
Which is fine. Right. It's just making an early commitment.
I couldn't hear.
It's just making an
Yeah,
earlier
right.
commitment to color. And for a long time in my career of painting, I was very shy about color. So I also think that color is very distracting to fundamental composition. And the more you're able to really control exactly what you want, where you want your shapes and what you want the message to be and the story that you're telling, the mood, the more you can do that without color and then flip the color in there, it works better for me.
Right.
Because otherwise I just end up adding too many colors.
Yeah. Okay. Not as subtle.
So Leah, may I ask a question?
Of course.
When you're sitting down to choose your photograph,
Yes.
and I think someone else asked this question, how do you you do a lot of figure work. Your photos have figures, but what if you do landscape or objects, or how do you determine what makes like I have a gazillion pictures of flowers and gardens and all that sort of thing. But how do you determine what makes a good photo to do this?
So I think the same rules apply. And I spent most of COVID not working on a figure and also not photographing a figure. So I really pushed myself not, to work. I didn't want to be just home, during COVID not working. So I would just self-assign photo shoots and I was like setting up still lifes with empty dresses and flowers. And I still felt like I was practicing those same like principal rules of lighting and composition and quiet space and busy space and foreground and background that I would with a model. The thing about a model is that you're primarily determining which images by a facial expression or almost like or a shape, right? Like a physical gesture that's a little bit more literal. I think it depends a little bit too on you, on what you would like to paint, like how you like to paint. So I can look at some images that you're having trouble choosing between, and I can give you my preference. I found for me when I was looking at flower images or just still life stuff that I still tended to like stuff that was like arching out, like that it had this kind of like composition that sort of went up and arched out, or went down and flowed, which is so it's kind of like, and I think every artist, like if I took away your camera and all of your paints and everything, if I stripped you down to what your favorite shapes were on a piece of paper, like that we would all have a form, whether it was a circle in the middle or 3 triangles or a line, you know, horizontal line, right? So I think over time too, I've realized that all of my paintings want to have like a sweeping arch on, like, which sounds kind of overly simple, but yet, and also I like lights and darks. I really like high contrast stuff that's light and dark. So whether that's the object making that shape or the lighting, those are kind of things that I look for.
Is it helpful to have negative space, or do you go like a tight crop? Because I feel like with the negative space, you can play around with stencils and other things.
I think with encaustic, both can be interesting. I'm going to talk about mounting the photographs to a panel, and one of the things that I cover when I talk about that is making the image size smaller than the canvas size, so that you're forcing yourself to step out of your original photograph into extra space.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you going to do with that space? How are you going to fill it? Are you going to leave it blank? Right? Are you going to put a bunch of stencils on it? Are you going to collage a bunch of stuff in there? Are you going to scribble all over it? I mean, I think that's a good question, great question, and we're going to cover it. As far as cropping the photographs, I don't worry so much about how I crop them, although I have been playing around with some just fun crops and different shapes, like cropping tighter on the face, for example, instead of leaving like the whole head, or cropping the sky out. So these are all sort of tools that you can use, or combining 2 pictures together that weren't together is also something that I like. And then these just sort of become exercises. And I think you have to be attached to an image. You have to be like drawn to it to want to work on it.
Yeah.
And I don't have any judgment. I think everybody's going to pick and choose their own images that they're drawn to. I think you just really have to listen to your gut or have a feeling. Also, Candace, just for you, I like to be able to tell a story or add to a photograph, right? So, and sometimes if my photographs have too much content or information, I actually have to like purposely delete stuff, which I'm going to show you next, to kind of like start to evoke the painter, right? Because the painter is a different personality than the photographer.
Okay.
And we're putting these 2 people together in this work. So you kind of gotta like, you gotta play little tricks. Like you gotta be like tricking the photographer into like putting the photos, you know, getting them, picking them, editing them, putting them in black and white, getting them, and then the painter can sort of take over and start messing them up, right? So, right, because a lot of encaustic photographers, when they first start, they go, well, why would I want to cover that photo up with wax? And I'm like, well, because you're going to completely transform, you're going to take it for a ride. You're going to completely transform it into something else, right? So a couple of my other like drawing techniques, I just wanted to illustrate the pen, so I didn't get that far. But like for this one, like again, I might start to see the triangles, and this is just like when I start to enjoy, you know, just art for art's sake, sort of like, you know, just, I don't know, just adding these triangles here, you know, adding triangles here. And I mean, honestly, Candace, if there wasn't a figure here, I would still want to paint this photo, you know?
Okay.
And I would want to paint it because like I could enjoy, I mean, there's so many things, just basic composition. I mean, I can enjoy this circle, I can enjoy the pattern, I can make the flowers bigger. I mean, I like the spots over here and textures in this wall. I could sort of just kind of take it and go somewhere with it. So I'm happy. I'm thinking of things. The pen is a pretty cool technique. If you guys, if anybody likes like dotting, and dotting is like, so you could use a Sharpie or a marker, any kind of drawing or mark making you want to do to the photograph before you engage in the wax process can be really fun and freeing. It can also add some texture and inspiration later when you are waxing. These triangles are kind of fun. Some of my other techniques that I use on photographs before I wax them is I sand them with sandpaper. Okay. And I also paint them with gesso. So the reason for the sandpaper is, as I don't know if you guys might have already thought of this, but when I use the black, what I'm doing, what's called burning. So in the darkroom, when we make photographs darker, we're burning them. We're adding more darkness, right? And the opposite of that, does anybody know the opposite of that?
Dodging.
Is dodging, right? So I'm burning right now with this black chalk, but then I'm going to dodge with the sandpaper. But also, Candace, like, this is kind of interesting. I mean, even just for still life, like now I've got this table here, so I kind of gone outside the edge and sort of started drawing this table. I could also, like, you know, sort of start recreating this background. I could elaborate on her clothing here, you know, by sort of like taking her shirt outside the edge, right? So I'm just thinking of fun ways of expanding the photograph into the painting and into the drawing, right?
Okay.
So the opposite of adding darkness, right, or texture. I love the dots, you guys. I cannot tell you how fun this is. You can just take a pen. When we get the wax on here next week, you can take like a little tool and make all these dots. It's like these tiny little like perforation marks, or little like organic, like, you know, wood on the beach that's been like eaten away by the ocean, or when the woodpecker gets the trees and he makes all those cool little holes in them. I think they're very beautiful. All right, so I'm gonna put that away. So the sandpaper is gonna be my dodging tool. So I could go into one of these areas that's light, and I can lift the ink by doing a sanding motion. I can make some areas that are lighter, and I can go all the way down. I can go all the way down to the paper, right? So I could, and I'm typically just going to do it in areas that are already light, unless I want to get rid of some information that's in the photo. So I literally could use, say I wanted to get rid of the tabletop. I could literally just keep sanding and kind of get rid of the detail of the table, right? I could also add some more flowers over here above her head, or suggest some flowers by simply removing and sanding the ink and lightening the whole area, right? And it definitely gives it kind of a cool effect also.
Yeah.
And I think the effect is similar to the chalk effect, right? Where it's kind of like lightweight and airy. And it just makes the photo look more of like an alternative process image. And it sort of starts to blur the lines. Like I'm really starting to feel like this shirt could actually like be, you know, 3-dimensional. And I love the drawing photo mix. Okay. Any questions on burning with a crayon, burning with a wax crayon or chalk, right? Adding darkness where you might want more contrast, adding dots where you might want like aerated texture, right? Or like tracing outside line, adding silver into midtones. Also possibly adding text or mark making in general, right? So if you're working on images that are floral or landscape, you could use any of these techniques to enhance cloud formations or horizon lines, or if you had telephone poles or trees, right? You can be emphasizing movement and composition through that. I did a little demo this afternoon. I don't want to leave you guys out, but I did just a little demo on just drawing, you know, types of line and mark making. I mean, these are definitely like my go-to shapes. And I think it's fun to just like ask yourself every once in a while to do a little free drawing or try to draw something you're looking at, and try different drawing with different tools. So the chalk versus the pencil versus the marker and the wax crayon, right? So these are like 4 different gates of drawing, totally different. All right.
Yeah. Is that charcoal or is that?
It's just black. It's black. It's charcoal. Or black, yeah, dry. It's dry. It's not oily. And the thing that I like it, you know, like I love a lot of painters. I love Amsel Kiefer and I love Gerhard Richter. And one of my favorite lines that Gerhard Richter always wrote is that, you know, a line should not just be a line. It should be a line drawn and then wiped 1, 2, 1, 2, right? So like here's just the line. Like the blurry line is so much more interesting than the straight line, right? The definite line has no interest. I'm not interested in it at all. I'm interested in the blurry line. So the line that moves and is kind of, you know, hazy and not defined. That's the line that interests me more. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is adding gesso as the opposite of sort of drawing, or adding black would be adding white. So you could think about it as adding highlight white. You could think about it as adding more content. And you could also think about it as blocking out, eliminating, right? So technically you could eliminate in black, but I wouldn't, the only thing, I mean, if you were gonna do a large area, I would recommend like black paint, acrylic paint, possibly, not a line drawing. So say I wanted to take this girl out of this environment, right? Or create an alternative. So I'm going to do it twice. I can use both of these. Or if, say, I don't want to have as much darkness in the image. So maybe I'm okay with dark at the bottom, but maybe I want to actually make the sky. What if I wanted to make a sky with like big white clouds here above her head? Okay. So what I could do is I could take the gesso and use it to really, I'm just gonna grab a paintbrush, hang on one second. I'm gonna take the gesso and I'm gonna use it as as white out. So I'm literally gonna use it to white out the whole top of this photo. So for example, if you had a figure or a still life or a boat, I mean, it could be anything that was in a very crowded bay. Let's just say the boat, for example, and you just wanted to have only your one boat, right? You can take the gesso and literally, you know, change the whole, like Photoshop, you can kind of cut and paste, right? The whole scene by just whiting it out. So not only am I getting to white out the top and maybe change this to like a big blue sky with clouds in it, but I'm also lightening the whole photo, and I'm giving myself all of this awesome encaustic gesso texture. I'm sorry, wait, come here for a second. And what's neat is that the gesso dries and has like a life of its own. It has like an interesting 3-dimensional texture, which you could then add another material to, like the chalk, like the wax or chalk. So I'm just gonna try to use the brush to kind of, now that's completely changed the atmosphere of this photograph, right? Rather than having like this kind of dark sky, just to have this light, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hmm.
And now I kind of feel like I want to add more. I feel like to counterbalance that, because I made it so I feel like I should just go. And I use in editing, I use a filter program called Alien Skin. And so this one gives me this like painted like edge, which I think is kind of nice. So I don't have like a straight rectangular frame on the photo. Does that make sense? I have like this, so it's kind of neat because it just kind of like comes, and I just extended the photo, you know, another 1.5 to 2 inches out the bottom, right? But she's kind of looks like like Virgin of Guadalupe a little bit, especially with the arch over her head, right? These are my goddesses to save us from COVID. These are my flower goddesses that are going to save us and make COVID go bye-bye. The bugs are going to eat it. We're going to have COVID eating insects soon.
Like the spotted lanternfly, maybe?
Oh my God, yes, exactly. I have lots of those at my house. I have the babies.
Yes, and there are millions of them right now.
Yes, and they are kind of cute. They're black and they have like little white spots on them. But they're not cute, right? They're not good.
No, they're really not. You don't have them across the country yet, do you?
Do you guys
No.
No. So I could also, no, does anybody else have the lovely lanternfly? Okay.
I
So-
don't think we have them in Oregon, but
No.
No. Well, good. Don't get them.
Yeah.
They're bad for the plants and trees. Okay. So I could also use stencils with the gesso on the underpainting. And before I do that, oh, actually, I can just go ahead and do it. I'm going to go ahead and do it. So these are unmounted prints right now. So I'm still in the unmounted print area. I'm just trying to think. I could use, I'm just going to use like a little leafy one to just kind of add. I'm just going to make these flowers kind of go. I'm just going to make these flowers go all the way down to the ground here, right? Again, I might want to start with my little bit of outline on the outside line, right? I love this outside line. So it's just a real simple thing when if you first like, you can kind of just walk yourself through these steps. Like, okay, darken the outside line, right? Step number 1. Just kind of go and see how that feels, right? Try it with the oil stick first. Then darken the outside line with the chalk. See how that feels. Blend it a little bit, draw a line, blend it, right? There's kind of like a nice little rhythm to it. Draw a line, blend it, right? So I'm just going outside line, following stuff. I see some circles here. I'm gonna make some circles. I love this little shadowy area here. So outside line on the shadow areas. And a little blendy. And then I can go ahead and extend this flower garden a little bit. Just trying to figure out which. So I like to figure out the direction that the stencil is going, like by the shape, before I lay it down, right? So like if this is arching to this way, I want the stencil to also arch that way. So that means maybe like flipping it over and following the line. So I think I'm gonna go with this one because it looks pretty good. And then I just have to look at it. This is going out and this is going in. So I'm gonna go in. All right, now this stencil's a little bit dirty. So I'm not expecting the world of it. The other thing I just want to say about the stencils, and you'll see me use stencils next week and probably the week after, is do you see how I'm not brushing over it, but I'm sort of like blotting into it? Does that make, right? Because I think people try to, and even I like sometimes try to brush over it, but I think that moves the stencil so much and blurs the paint so that you don't get a good rendering of the stencil. And I'm just kind of looking for like a little bit. I don't need that much, and I don't need it to be that exacting, right? It's just sort of suggestive, right? I don't want it to be literal.
So you're not really going for texture now, you're just adding the white to it.
I'm just adding the white to it. I'm not really going for texture because I'm going to put so much wax over it. I don't need the texture because I'm going to cover it up with wax. I'm kind of just looking for highlight whites.
Okay.
I'm looking for highlight whites, and I'm looking for maybe changing a background or controlling a composition. But look, I see I just put it like all in her skirt, like where the highlight whites are. Mm-hmm. And then I could put like in all these white flowers. No, I think you're thinking of our watercolor class where
I wanted to know if this was different.
It is different because the wax is so heavy that the encaustic gesso texture is not going to stand up to the weight of the wax. The wax is just going to, like a wave, just wash right over it. So it doesn't have a voice. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm really just going for white and tonal ranges. I still feel like this side over here could be whiter so that I have a really nice gradient from darkest side to whitest side. So I might just take this brush and just kind of like white up the whole side. Now I could have also done this with sandpaper, right? So it would have been similar if I did it with sandpaper. But I want to have a sense of bright white over here. I don't know why. I just feel like I need to do that. And again, this is a foam brush. It's not a great tool, but it's kind of going to give me like that. But I like the idea that it's going from dark to light on this.
It's more balanced this way as well.
Yeah. And painting from bright white with encaustic is very nice thing to do because encaustic medium is fairly yellow. So adding some white gesso to your photograph or to your panel is a nice thing to do. It's a nice thing to have that clarity of the encaustic paint and translucent layers that you're going to put on and what colors they are if you're painting from an area that is truly bright white. Okay, I'm going to talk about print edging, and then we're going to talk about mounting to a panel. And then once we have some images on some panels, I'm going to show you the gesso again and the sandpaper. So these are the two things that I kind of use back and forth up until I put the wax on. Does somebody have a question?
If I'll wait for the panel. Like, do you pre-gesso the panel when you put the print, or you don't?
You know what? I used to gesso the panels, and I just don't do that anymore. It takes too much time and energy, and I'm gonna put the photo on top of it, and I don't think that there's enough acid in plywood or wood panels to harm my photograph archivally, and I'm not gonna be alive long enough if it does. So I just stopped wasting my time and energy in gessoing the panels. The reasons that I gesso are for my own satisfaction of having bright white areas or in manipulating for the photographs. I use the gesso for white out, and I use it to add composition and design by adding forms. I don't gesso my panels anymore. I just put the PVA glue down and I put the photo on top, and then I think that the wax is perfectly happy going right on the photo. If I am going to have a naked area, a naked like wood area, I still do not have to add encaustic gesso. You can put wax medium directly on wood.
So the purpose of encaustic gesso is like just basically to give it the tooth and for the archivalness of the photo, or like what does it really do?
The encaustic gesso?
Yeah.
It's a masking technique for me. I'm whiting out. I'm
Right.
using it to paint. I'm using it as if I was in Photoshop and cutting out my figure. Right. If I want to eliminate a background, if I wanted to add just a totally neutral white sky that I could then paint my own clouds or butterflies or flower, like it's really like just a white out. It's like a short of just, you know, having a white, like a white canvas.
Right.
It's just a way that I can make parts of the photograph white or whiter or lighten the photograph. It's also a way that I can start that sort of like manipulation and literally transformation of photograph to painting. It's kind of like, come on, shed, like come off photo, like come off reality and come in painting, right? So and I just love the encaustic gesso. I mean, really any of these materials, I mean, why do you do it? Like you do it because you like it. You know, if you try it, you don't like it, you don't have to do it. I mean, I'm working on these larger pieces, you know, so this is how I work. As I put the photo down, you know, on the panel, but look, I left this empty space, and I left the empty space. I put white polka dots on it with encaustic gesso, and I put big white flowers on the bottom to sort of start like this idea that this dress is getting like washed over with these huge flowers, right? So it's like the dress is going under and the flowers are going over, right? And then the wax is going to go over, and then the flowers are going to change color, and then the wax so it's like it literally it's so like a weave.
Yeah. Well, how you're using it makes makes sense. But I'm wondering, what is the use of encaustic gesso on the panel before the photo goes on it? Like there's
Nothing.
no
It gets covered. If you use encaustic gesso on a panel before the photo and you put the photo over top of it, it's doing nothing.
nothing. Exactly.
It's doing nothing.
Because when I used to do it, I was like, why am I doing it? Because I'm covering it anyway.
Right, exactly. And so it's exactly, that's why I don't do it anymore. It's like, why am I doing? So technically there is a tiny little bit of maybe solvents or acids that go into the manufacturing of plywood. So perhaps they're like something, but I feel like if you're using like a good, a nice archival glue in between the wood panel and the photograph, you're fine. You do not need to do an undercoating of gesso to put the photo on top. Okay. So there's no like the pie's gonna slip off and fall onto the floor. That's not gonna happen. You're gonna be totally fine. And I'm gonna demonstrate how I glue. I'm gonna talk about substrates. The one other thing I did want to kind of mention, and I'll go, or actually just if someone could remind me to go back, I wanted to talk about burning wood and burning gesso. So let me finish, let me stay in order.
Yeah.
So the next thing is going to be like edges and mounting to the panel just quickly. And then I'll go back, I'll end with like burning, which is really beautiful and fun. If you like that. If you don't like that, if you don't feel comfortable with a torch or catching your studio on fire. No, I'm just kidding. But you know, but how many of you are going to use torches and how many of you are going to use heat guns?
I have
Heat
both.
gun. I
I
have
have
both.
a torch. I have
I
both.
have both, but I like the torch more.
Okay. What about you, Joy?
A heat gun.
Heat gun. Okay. Okay. So, and Pam, what about you?
I don't know. I mean, this is all so new for me. So
Okay. Did you buy
my friend gave me this with different attachments on it.
oh yeah, the heat gun. Okay.
That's the heat gun. Oh, okay.
Okay.
I don't even know what some of these things are.
No, that's the heat gun. No, the heat gun is good. I mean, you're just not going to you're not going to be able to burn.
Mm-hmm.
You're just not going to be able to burn. And the thing that I like about burning is it just goes back to alchemy, you know, sort of like intense heat changing a material, you know, which I really love. I mean, that's kind of why I became an artist, you know, is because I love the darkroom. So when the darkroom went away, I was like, thank God for encaustic. I mean, I'm not a computer person. Like what was I going to do with digital photography? Like that's just, I could only do that. Like I seriously can only do digital photography like a couple hours a week at the most. It's like my least, it's like I don't like it. Okay. So I'm gonna walk you guys around over here. I'm just gonna show you this other, oh, I didn't show you earlier. So I just have like this one table in my studio as a dry table. And it just means that there's no paint over here. And on my dry table, I don't have a fancy cutting board or anything. I just have an old panel, and I have a T-square and a ruler, an X-Acto knife, a razor blade, and this is probably from like 1947. My T-square, my old wooden T-square, probably my grandfather's. So anyway, for the edges of the prints, right? I'm going to ask you all to go through your prints, and maybe like one or two are going to stay paper. You're not going to mount them to a substrate. And when you don't, you know, pick the print that you want and you don't mount it, I want you to think about the outside edges. Okay. So I have a couple examples here, which is nice. So this piece, I'm sorry if it has reflection. This piece has a mat on it, right? So what I did was I used masking tape, and I put masking tape around the outside edge of the piece, and then I painted the wax on, and then I painted it with pigment sticks. So when I was done, I pulled the tape off, and I had just naked paper. And then my framer was able to put a beautiful mat around the painting and put it in a frame, right? So it's nice to have an outside edge, and it's totally possible to frame encaustic photos. You just make sure that the mat is thick enough so that the glass just doesn't press on the wax. Okay? So for me, I wanted to really stay a sort of a part of contemporary photography, and I didn't want to just go fly off the handle into mixed media. So I worked hard on figuring out how to make encaustic pieces that could be framed. This is an encaustic piece that was framed without a mat. So what happens here is that there's just inside the frame, there's a little bit of a lifter, a plastic lifter.
Oh yeah.
And the print is just matted. The print is just matted to mat board and then float framed in the frame. And I've done like even very large pieces like this. I think the largest piece that I ever float framed without a mat was 16 by 20. I think if you get much bigger than that, the weight of the piece would be hard to just hold on a mat in a frame. I think you'd have to like either sew it or stitch it or staple it. Like you could think of something cool, like you could loop it, tie it to a mat board. You could put holes in it and attach it to, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can put paper in a cool frame, right? Okay, so like for this one, I'm gonna show you how to mask it with masking tape. For this one, I can't put masking tape on it because I did all that fun drawing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna use my T-square, and I'm just gonna trim the sides. So I'm gonna do a nice hand tear. I like the T-square because at least something's straight. If you want to be straight, you know you're straight, right? Because most of the time I'm not straight. So. I mean, anyway, that sounded weird, but you know what I'm trying to say. Hand tears are uncontrollable. You don't, and if you want to like bend the paper a little bit here, so you can kind of like bend it along the edge. If you lift the paper and press it along the edge, you can crease it a little bit, and then you can grab it and pull it, right? Or pull from along the hard edge. Now I could do those two edges like that, and then the top I could just free tear, right? So it'd have this real nice organic edge at the top, which is kind of nice, right? So it has like a couple different looks to it. It has a nice unbalanced top. The other thing that can look really cool, and I haven't done this in a while, but for a little while for my paper pieces, I was actually rounding the corners. So if you were interested in like cutting the paper into an oval or just rounding the corners, like vintage photos used to just be not square, but they would just be rounded. You could cut the edges off. Like there's a lot of really fun things to actually just do with photographs if you have a minute to kind of like think or play with different techniques. This is a perfect example, right? Because this print, like in the old days, like a glass plate would actually have like a semi-angled side, basically because of the way that the plate went into the camera, right? So we could do something fun with this one where I can take like an X-Acto knife and I could kind of just follow, round this corner a little bit and just free cut it with the X-Acto knife, which could look really cool. And, and you could even like curve the bottom a little bit. I mean, sometimes I was doing this with scissors too, which is a little bit harder. But it's just kind of different. you gotta let the photograph sort of speak to you, and also just sort of engage that creative, that like creativity. Like that looks kind of cool.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I could trim it so that there wasn't any more black on it, because that was, hang on, I'll trim it so there's.
Border that you had before, the glass plate border, did you paint that in?
No, that's it's called wet plate daguerreotype on alien skin. So the thing about alien skin is that it's a software program that was based off of actual photo emulsions.
Mm-hmm.
So it replicates historic. It replicates through actions in Photoshop certain film emulsions.
Okay.
So it has collodion, daguerreotype, cyanotype, Polaroid, Fuji, Tri-X, Plus X, Pro X, you know, Polar. It has cross-process Fuji. It's like pretty cool stuff. Okay, so on my table right here, I have 4 pieces of masking tape, and I put them on the table to begin de-sticking them so that they're not as sticky as they should be. And this is how I like to work with masking tape. I don't know if you noticed, but I also often have it on my apron, right? So I just keep the tape on my apron. I use the tape all the time. And I'll talk about how I use the tape, but I use tape in my studio when I'm working all the time. And I just don't want it to be super sticky because I don't want it to pull up my inkjet paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want it to hold a line for me, but not hurt my paper, right? So now I'm gonna frame my mat out. So it's like I'm matting it, right? But what it's gonna do for me is when I put the wax on here, I'm just gonna have this beautiful edge. You could go inside the image edge also, which could be pretty, and then you could out mat it, which means that the mat could actually have like white outside of here when you mat it. But I just I usually just go right to the line, right to the line, and then I cross over, and then I'm gonna paint this piece with wax next week. So I'm just gonna leave it now. I'm just gonna put the tape on, and then I'm gonna come back to it next week when we work together with the wax medium. Okay. And I might add some, I might sand this one a little bit because I'm seeing a circle. I'm seeing a cool circle. Like right here, I'm seeing a circle. So I'm going to go for it, right? I'm seeing like, I just see the circle there. And then maybe there's like another circle there. I don't know. Okay. All right. So we did edges, right? Any questions on edges? No? Okay. So now we're going to talk about substrates. So there are a number of different types of substrates available. I'm just going to go through them very quickly. If you have more questions about them, you can email me. The basic types are cradled, right, which have a frame on the back. When I do large pieces, like the 48 by, like the large pieces, they're almost like double cradled. So they're cradled around the outside and then they're braced up the middle, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is just safety and warping, because large pieces of plywood, if they're not, you know, stuck to structures, they might have moisture in them and they might over time start to warp. So panels are a bit of an investment. So not only are they a financial investment, but they're also time consuming. So gluing to the panel is time consuming. And it's a little bit more of a commitment, I think, than working on paper. And a lot of time, if I'm considering an image to wax and invest the time and money in waxing, I might make a paper piece first of the image. I might also make that paper piece a couple of times before I move up to a panel. It just is something that over time, you know, working all the time in my studio, it's just sort of like one of those aha moments, like, I have a box of panels that just really didn't work out, and I can recycle them, but then I've wasted, you know, time and wax, and, you know, and then it's work to scrape them back. And I definitely don't throw panels out. If the pieces seem unsuccessful, I keep them in my shit box over here that I got my foot on right now. But and I might, you know, try to scrape them back or add something, or, you know, play with them another day. But I like to kind of know and have a lot of confidence in the imagery before I start on the panel. There's a couple different sizes. This is just flat wood. This is it's just birch plywood. It's fairly inexpensive. The nice thing about something thin like this is that I could pop it into a frame, right? Here's another cradle panel, right? And cradle panels can be different thicknesses. They actually make cradle panels that are like 2 inches thick, which are kind of interesting if anybody, you know, wants something that can stand up on its own. Or really if you want to really get dimensional with working, like the sides of the panel can be really beautiful. You can collage things on the sides. You can put holes on the sides. You can put gold leafing on the side. Like there's a lot. You can burn them and then wax them. And there's a lot that can be done with all the parts of the panel. Okay, so it definitely makes it a little bit more sculptural. Sometimes it's nice to have an odd shaped panel, right? Like long and skinny, or maybe oval, or like this, right? It's just nice to start thinking outside of our standard 8 by 10, 11 by 14, 16 by 20, right? Just think about other things. Oh, and this is the last one I wanted to mention. This is a material. This is a signage material. And what I like about it is it's very lightweight, and it will never bend or warp. And it has no water in it. It has no possibilities of being moist or being affected by water in any way, because it's a hybrid material of aluminum and plastic. So, and it's pretty cheap. It comes from a signage, a freight company called Harbor Sales, and I can email you guys the information. So you can get them to cut it for you. And what's nice about it too is that it's very thin, and you can pop it right into a frame. And very lightweight, and it takes up a lot less storage space than a heavy 50-pound wood panel. But you have, you know, materials are materials. You know, you have to really like your materials and feel like they're reflective of the work that you're making. You can glue to this just like you can glue to wood. Okay, so I have my 2 photos that are going on paper. I could now think about which photos are going to go on which boards, and I'm just going to kind of, I don't want to lose too much of this, but I like the idea of turning this rectangle into a square. That's maybe a good idea. I think this one could go nicely on here. Like on this one could go nicely on this panel. I'd have to be willing to crop this. I have to really crop this to a square if I do this panel, but that could be okay. And I think I have one more. I might do one more. I might try to figure out something for this skinny one too, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Okay. So for the gluing, I have a new friend, a new favorite tool, which is this fun paint roller. So I love it because it has a long handle. I'm just doing this to get the moisture out of it because I washed it. So this makes my gluing so easy, you guys, like so easy. I don't know how I ever glued before I had this thing. And really, I don't know why I ever used a brush. I think I've even, in these some days, have used even a paper towel. But just having a roller, if you don't have a roller, you could absolutely use just a regular old foam brush, right, like this. Or if you don't have any, either of these tools, you could just use a paper towel, although you really want the glue to be even as possible. Okay, I'm going to use my PVA adhesive, and I'm going ahead and I love these aluminum pans. This one was actually from this frozen ravioli that we got from Whole Foods, which is actually also really good. But this pan is awesome, and I wish I could find these to buy them because I love this size. Usually I use these loaf pans, but I don't love these because they're too deep and too narrow. So this one is shallow and wider and much better. So I go ahead and I put, a good amount of PVA glue in this pan. And then I always add a couple drops of water. The lemon is optional. Just kidding. Okay, so just a couple drops of water, and then I take like the end of a paintbrush or something. The water really helps because otherwise the glue doesn't, like the roller doesn't move. It's too stiff. So I add just a couple drops of water, right? And then I just wipe the brush off. So I'm going to go ahead with this one. If I was going to trim this one, I'm just going to use the panel to trim it. So I'm just going to kind of estimate where I want it to go. And I'm going to just lay the panel down on top of it. I got wet gesso over there. And I'm just going to tear it. I'm just going to tear it. I'm just going to use the panel as my straight edge right now. And I'm just going to tear it. All right. And I got some.
Leah,
yeah.
Do you use the 3M mounting adhesive anymore?
Oh, no.
No, okay.
Oh, no. I don't know that I ever use that.
Oh, okay. I saw somebody use it. I thought it was you, but maybe not.
Oh, God, no.
Okay.
No 3M materials, no.
Okay.
I used to use Yes Paste, but I really just got so frustrated with Yes Paste, mostly because, I mean, my studio is not 100% climate controlled, but I felt like the Yes Paste was very affected by moisture, like humidity. We have a lot of humidity here. And I was using it to secure heavier papers. So actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I really try now to only glue papers under 200 GSM. I don't want to fuss and force a paper to glue and stay down and stay secure. If it's too heavy and it just wants to fold up or roll up or wrinkle, I'm not doing that. I'm not dealing with it. I want my papers to go suction cup to the surface on my nice even coat of PVA glue, no air bubbles, no problems, right? So really, like I'm getting like into lighter and lighter papers, which is like the opposite, because when I started out, I really loved the heavy duty double weight fiber papers, the watercolor papers, the Arches papers. Now I just really think of this photograph as just like a sketch, you know, just a starting point for what's going to come in the future. I'm not as invested, right, over time, which is it was like a shift. It's a change for me. So, but they're easier to glue. They're easier to handle. I can lickety split. Look, I'm gonna roll it like hello, right? That's all I got to do. It's like wheat paste. It's kind of fun. You know, and people always say to me like, oh, what if I don't have an, you know, a fancy Epson printer or whatever? I'm like, try your Xerox machine. You know, like go to Kinko. Well, we can't even go to Staples right now, but anyway, go to your local printer and take some small photographs and get them printed on some nice matte papers and, you know, make some art, have some fun. All right, so this is gonna go on, you guys don't need to look, this is gonna go on this, this dye bond, right? This signage material. And I'm just gonna, this is lightweight paper too. This is like a rice paper. So I'm gonna think about centering her, my Virgin of Guadalupe, my Virgin of Ripka Street. This is my Ripka Street Virgin here, my Philadelphia Virgin. And I'm just gonna use my fingers to kind of smooth it out. And you can see like this, I'm just able to use like the palm of my hand to get these air bubbles. And it's just gonna go, I can see one right here. And now I'm moving my gesso, which is cool. I can even, and the nice thing, okay, you guys, the nice thing about the thinner papers is that they even might wrinkle. Like, oh my God, that's so nice and cool, like friendly, wrinkle. So human. They're not gonna fight me. Okay, and this dye bond is nice to glue to too. I don't know why, but it's a little flatter and smoother than wood. So it just goes on like so, like buttercream. And she got a little dirty, right? Because I got charcoal on her and glue on her and gesso on her, but that's cool. I'm fine with it. I might fix her hand when she's dry, but right, that looks nice. And now look, I got bright white over here. I got lots of extra canvas. So I think I might collage this, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to go ahead because my God, it's already 7:46. And I know we started a little bit late, so if you guys are okay, can we go a few minutes over?
Mhm.
Is anybody gonna like pass out if they don't get out at 8 o'clock? You're gonna, okay. Okay, so let's do, I'm not gonna do this one next. I'm gonna do this one next. Okay, so I'm gonna do this one. And same thing, I'm not, look, I didn't do anything to the board. Just a nice piece of wood. I'm just gonna lay my print down on top, and I'm gonna roll my glue on. Now this is a different paper, so this is 188 GSM photo rag, but 188 still like I only like the lightweights, right? I only want lightweights. And even for collage paper, like if I'm collaging found paper or ephemera paper, I'm gonna go for like old letters or tissue papers or wrapping papers or old napkins. I'm not gonna go for any cardboard or heavy rice papers or woven papers. That's just not my thing. I mean, you could try it. So I got an air bubble here, but still it's pretty forgiving. Like I can just lift it and push the air bubble out and then seal it back, right? So now I have the paper hanging off the top up here, right up here. So I could decide to leave this edge floating off. I could also maybe even, I could wrap it, right? So options here, I could wrap it around and then trim it. I could wrap it around the bottom too, might be nice. See if it'll stick. I don't know, but we'll just let that go. And see, like over here where I didn't meet up the edge, I could just take my gesso, and this is a nut, like, I don't know if any of you have ever done any like photo touch-up work, but like you could just sort of paint out, you know, I can just kind of fudge this line just so it doesn't look so obvious, right? That I'm missing part of that edge, right? And so I just kind of made her shirt, the folds in her fabric go a little wider. And I could just put some texture outside here. And once I put the wax over it and start blending it, you're never even gonna like see this. It's just gonna be, right? You would just never notice. So I'm just gonna blend positive and negative space and no problems, right? All right. I did do, let me show you just two other things, and then I want to show you the burning. But earlier I did do a collage. And I did it on the dye bond. I did this collage. So, and I did an interesting crop, right? So I cropped half her face off. It's also long and skinny. And then at the top I have, this is some really cool, it's actually just white piano paper. It's like almost like tissue paper. It has little holes punched in it. It's pretty cool stuff. And then an old letter here and just a flower that I cut out. So if any of you like to do paper cutting of any kind, it could be really beautiful, even if you just made a paper cut, like out of black paper or brown paper, like some lacy thing. You could make some other material and add it to the collage. So same technique would apply, PVA glue on the back of the pieces and then lay the pieces on the board and just make sure that there's no air bubbles, right? This is a piece that I was talking about earlier in the day today also, because this is the example of encaustic gesso, wood, and burning. Okay, so I'm gonna demo this. It'll be like our grand finale for tonight. And I'm gonna do this on the piece that I have over here behind me, okay? So I did not know really about burning until about 2 years ago. And it definitely like was like an aha moment for me. I was pretty excited about learning about burning. Because it really represented another way that I could sort of manage tone. And I felt like it was another way that I could get things to sort of blend together well. So wait here. So do you see how I burn down here? And these are sort of like the spaces that I really start to like get excited about. You know, is like this little space in here. You know, like, I mean, yeah, the rest of the piece is fine or whatever, but I'm really excited about this little space in here.
Yeah, it's cool.
And it's cool. And what happens is it's like when the foreground sort of starts to become three-dimensional because the background gets darker, right? And you get that little sense of like, of pop, of something like, something happening, right? So when I go ahead.
Is that burnt gesso or is that the wood?
This is, so what I did was I did the photo, I did put the photos on. And this is interesting too, because it's actually a combo of a couple different prints of the same picture. So I don't know if you can see, like there's a tonality shift between this part of the dress and this one. It's just a little bit darker. And then I did the encaustic gesso stenciled flowers on top and like the dots up here. So I'm gonna, and then now I'm gonna burn them. So you'll see how the gesso kind of stays white and the wood burns. So it's just naked wood. It's just the naked wood, yeah, that gets dark.
Bless you.
Bless you. Who's sneezing?
Thank you.
I think this chair is gonna hold this. So can everybody see that? I'm gonna work on this part right here. Now, I don't think that you can do this with the heat gun. I just don't think it's gonna happen.
Oh my goodness, bless you.
Thank you.
And you know, it's funny, like, I used to really love brown and black and gray, but there was this time that I just was like, I don't like brown anymore. But I do sort of like it with, like, I started using walnut ink this winter a little bit, and I like the brown of the walnut ink. And then I really do like the brown that comes from burning. So you can take, depending on the distance of the torch to the panel, you know, you can kind of go lightly, and when you're light on it, it's just like a lighter brown, like further away. And then if you get closer, you can go darker. So I couldn't really see those polka dots before I sort of started burning, but now I can see them more. And I could go back into them with white paint and sort of make them pop out. I can also tone the photographs through the heat.
So Leah, the part where you're burning is exposed wood.
Is it what?
The part where you're burning is exposed wood, or is that covered with, or is that a photo, or is that exposed?
I think the best way to burn is to have positive and negative space, gesso, and naked wood.
Yeah.
So here, I'll do it on the little one. So like, it might like slightly brown the gesso, but it's very easy to go back in. If you wanted it to stay white, bright white, it's very easy to go back in, you know, and increase this contrast by adding white, right? If it gets too brown. I mean, like, this is just like a beautiful art. I want everybody to do a board. No, I'm just kidding. But this is just fun. I love having these like sort of just extra little things in my studio just to like play around with, that like I'm not taking too seriously, but are just about materials. They're not about content. They're just about material, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of just always helps me think about like, what can I do when I get up to bat, you know, like what else, what other tricks do I have? So you can see too, here I put a bunch of little pencil marks on there, which I think are really beautiful. And I put a bunch of little dots in there, which are beautiful. Oh, sorry. I don't, can you guys see me?
Wow.
And then if I wanted to do like the outside edge, right? It's kind of pretty. And if there was, I feel like the photographs burn nicely too. I don't think that they just catch on fire, you know. But like, look how pretty that tonality is in there. It's kind of like green, you guys. It's so cool. You see how it's kind of like greenish in here? It's like beautiful. And look, there's like a, you know, the circle. All right. I think with just the heat gun, you will get, you can try it. I mean, you know, if you have an extra piece of wood, put some encaustic gesso and try with the heat gun. You can definitely toast up the gesso so that it bubbles and cracks. You might be able to get a little browning on the wood if you stay there, you know, consistently for a little while. But these, you know, the plumber's torch, these are like, come to the hardware store. They're not fancy. They're safety torches too. So that means if they tip over, they shut off. And sometimes that's problematic because you want to like fuse or torch at an angle, and then it just shuts off because it's on an, so, but their safety, they're I've never had any bad things happen with the torch. Any questions, comments, thoughts, things you want me to repeat? I have a couple monkey wrenches I'm going to throw at you, but go ahead.
What are your favorite papers? Because there's just so many out there.
Oh, I only use Hahnemühle. I've been sponsored by them since 2008.
Okay.
I did early in my bookmaking career, I did get a lot of interest from Moab paper, and they did give me quite a bit of paper years ago. But then once, I think I liked Hahnemühle because they had so many papers, and I felt like they were a great company because they were across the board all arts. Like they make drawing paper, watercolor paper, pen and ink paper, stationery, journals, but like they did everything. And I just connected with them. So now I've just really gotten to know their papers. But I mean, it is a little bit like a science experiment. And if you consistently change one thing, you're changing everything. You know?
Yeah.
And it's always good to be experimental and open-minded. And if you can't get that paper, what other paper, or or what if I try? But then that's just it's a new experience.
Right. Like, have you ever tried different papers on one panel? Like, if would this dress, for example, would you play with different weights of paper on the same panel, or is it generally the same paper on the panel?
That's a really good question. I think that playing around with weights of paper is a really great idea. I'm just not, I mean, of course, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great idea. And I think Candace could maybe even show a piece. I feel like she's done, and I did one earlier today where, I mean, you could intentionally layer papers. So I was talking earlier a little bit about split toning and changing the tone. So it makes it look so like surreal how her face is half her face is brown. And also because this paper is thicker and it's like lifted on top, right? It's coming forward. So it creates depth. And I mean, if you want to spend the time gluing heavy papers in layers and then waxing them, more power to you. Like it will be beautiful. It will be, I mean, beautiful. And I talked to an artist a couple days ago who wanted to print on like a muslin, like a thin fabric, and then put that over the panel, glue that onto the panel, and then wax it. And I was like, that sounds amazing. Like I want to do that right now. Like I don't feel like my printer would print on muslin. I just don't, I feel like that would not, but I know there are printers that do. I mean, you can buy it. So
I have a question about the painting you're working on back here, right behind you.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned there are different tones. So that is not, you didn't collage different paper with different tones.
No, I did. Look, this is, I did. So, wait, I'm going to tell you a little secret. So my printer is small. My printer is 17 by 22. So if I make anything that's bigger than 16 by 20, I have to put it together in pieces.
Okay.
And then sometimes what I do is you guys are like psychic. I do exactly what Pooja just said. And I like the pieces to have gradients between them. So I print in different exposure values and on different papers,
Okay.
and then I put them back together.
Oh, that is cool. That's very cool.
And sometimes it's less intentional. Sometimes it's more because I like just am not an exact, like I'm not an exactor. I'm not exact. I'm not precision oriented. I'm artsy fartsy. I'm like art oriented. So if something doesn't fit, or I have an extra piece, or I don't know, I kind of like piece it back together. Now for the bigger pieces that I showed you earlier, I did not mess around that much with them because they're so big, and I'm on, like, I just felt like less was more because of their size, because they're so big. So I got a little intimidated there about messing around with layering papers and blah, blah, blah. So I kept it a little, like I kept it more like a grid.
Okay.
Like a checkerboard.
Yeah. So I have another question. When you're talking about framing the encaustic pieces, do you need to frame it? Doesn't the wax create a nice seal over it?
So anything that is mounted to a substrate absolutely should not be framed. Anything that is mounted to anything that's technically mounted to another material. The material could be cardboard, dye bond, wood, plywood, panel. Absolutely, you do not need to frame it. No, the wax is a strong exterior. It has resin in it. It can be buffed up. It can be cleaned easily. It can be taken care of easily. The things that I was talking about wax on paper pieces, where you're taking like just a print, and we're going to do this next week, and you're just putting like a coat of wax on it and a little bit of oil stick or pigment on it, and those look really lovely in a frame, I think, and they speak to like contemporary photography, where because technically when you glue a photo to another when you glue a photo to another material, you're sort of devaluing it as a print, you're transforming it into a mixed media piece. You're making it into something else. Yeah, it was me. My torch.
Well, so can you do a collage on just using paper, but not putting it on wood or gluing it onto anything else?
Of course.
Yeah.
You could use your substrate could be that heavy watercolor paper. It could be some kind of handmade paper that you made. So look, you could even, if you wanted to even eliminate the glue, you could take like a beautiful print like this, and you could stitch it to a heavy watercolor paper, right?
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot, and then you can wax it. I've waxed canvas. I've made like canvas books and waxed. I've used canvas as the cover and done single signature books with photos inside and waxed the whole. I've waxed the whole thing. I waxed the canvas, the inside, red.
Okay.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of artists use encaustic as a more sculptural, you know, as like a like to create like vessel or things. They use it, sometimes people use it with something called paper clay. So if you're like into fiber arts and paper, you can just start to think about.
That's a whole nother.
Yeah, you just want, I just want to go like this, right? Or like this. Like those are my shapes.
Movement shapes.
Yeah. And I honestly like, I really love like large pieces of paper. I do. I mean, if I knew that I had like, you know, a very large artist budget, I would seriously consider not mounting on panels and working on paper, and then being able to frame them properly and beautifully. That would be very attractive to me. But, you know, I don't have that right now. And the panel allows me a certain type of work that I know is secure, and I don't have to frame it, and I can do a lot of I can really work it.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Well, and then you can also do the burning down to the naked wood. You've got, it's a whole
exactly. Like if I burn paper, I'm gonna put a hole in it, which could be really beautiful, but then it's gonna be so fragile. Then it's beautiful. I mean, there's an artist who's she uses encaustic, and I don't remember her name right now, but I follow her. She burns holes, tiny little holes in all of her work. That's what it's about. It's about like burning paper, and it's just so beautiful. It looks like Victorian lace meets like Day of the Dead. It's like, it's like you're just like, that is gorgeous. Thready and.
Leah,
yeah.
You showed the photo and then collage. Can you collage and then put the photo over top of collage?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, there are no, like, you can gesso, dry it, and then draw on it. You can gesso, you can sandpaper, gesso, you can glue, sandpaper, gesso. You can really work these surfaces with the paper and the glue and the gesso and the drawing in any order. It's only when we start to sort of transcend like wax orders that, you have to follow some rules. Okay. But I mean, if you make something, you feeling it, you make something. I mean, people get really strict about like no acrylics and no wax, but as long as you're not using acrylic in between the wax, you're fine. Like, and people ask me, can you glue onto wax? And like, I mean, yeah, I've glued stuff onto wax. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't recommend, I think if they really want to go on top of the wax and keep building up, I've used wood glue, and it's worked. Just depends. I mean, maybe if you like secured it or nailed it, I don't know. You're just building more you're going out on fragile water. Thin ice, right? But
so
awesome.
For the next session, should we have some things that are prepped? Should we prep something?
Yeah, I want you to do I want you to do everything I just showed you. I want you guys to do what I just showed you, and I want you to come. You have to be ready to wax.
Okay.
Because I'd like you to be waxing. If you can wax with me, that's great. If you just want to watch me wax, that's totally fine too. But I'd at least like you to, I don't want you to get like be ready. Because once you get all that info on waxing, and you're going to be dying to do it. You don't want to have to go back and do all this work. So also there's a lot in tonight's class that could be really inspirational to you to work even just on wood with gesso and pens and pencils and heat, right? Without a photo, to work on adding the photo to the panel, just playing around with like edges and maybe like an X-Acto knife, or maybe you have a cool shape you want to trace, or an oval. Like, I'd really like to see you guys come up with some cool ideas. So at least two paper pieces, right? So I suggest like one with the masking tape and one cut or torn, right? One, cut, so two, and then, one on a board, at least two on boards. Maybe one has a collage element or some empty space, and one fills the frame. That's 4 pieces. And then one, if you can do an extra one that doesn't have, that's just material.
Just working, learning it, yeah.
Just material, just wood and gesso and pens and pencils. I always like to have a lot of these around because you can't always be driving yourself to content, work. You know, you have to play. You have to be play, and I don't care, and I don't know. I don't need to know. And then yeah, if you know, like I like to combine like this kind of stuff, right? But I think you know what some of you are asking me too is like, I think you're starting to think about how you want it to look, but where do you add it?
Yeah.
Add it in the beginning, or do you add it under, or do you add it over, or do you add it at the end?
Yeah, the workflow is sometimes confusing because you do something and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that because now I've ruined it.
No, well, that's what I'm trying to say. You're not going to ruin anything. You're not ruining anything. But I do like, with all of my freedom, I like my structure.
Yeah.
So you can't have, that's what we're definitely learning about life right now too, I think, is that we can't just have our freedom without following the rules, because we're going to make people sick. Like, it's not a joke. We're not messing around. So we need structure so that we can have freedom. Right? So again, that's sort of why I created, and I like the 3 classes. I like the fact that we didn't work with wax tonight. We worked with chalk and pencils and scissors and X-Acto blades and foam brushes and rollers and I mean, we worked with a lot of stuff. It wasn't like it was boring, right?
No.
Right. And next week we're gonna work with less materials, but it's gonna be a lot harder. Which is interesting too, in a different way, right? Because wax is it's hard to handle, right? So, but I think every person might have different challenges, whether it's getting started or finishing, right?
Both.
And then your question was perfect. Like, do I put this on? In your question, like, do I put it on now, or do I put it on? Like, where do I get that texture I'm looking for and the depth? And so, just try the way. I think just to stick to as close as what I'm trying to teach you, and then we can figure out you could change the process as you move into it. But like don't add any color right now. No color. Blue.
No color.
Or brown. Yeah. No. Oh yeah, and that's so funny. I just said that because that's exactly what I was gonna that was gonna be your monkey wrench. Maybe I should refrain after I just was like bossy. But I was going to put out the possibility that you can tint the gesso. So for Bonnie and Candace, they already know about this, but you can add something fun as an undertone. So this is turmeric. It's totally organic. And if you add this to the gesso, it makes it like a really pretty kind of apricot-y, like an earthy peach.
Okay.
You can also tone the encaustic gesso with watercolors from a tube.
Is your turmeric liquid or is it a powder?
It's a powder, but but that's a really good question. So what happens when you add it to the gesso is it gets very dry very fast. So you have to add like a little bit of water, or just use a little bit of turmeric. Don't add too much because it'll get too dry. It'll just turn into like clay.
Okay.
But so there, I just totally contradicted myself. So at that, I'm going to say goodnight, because then you guys can't be like that. Like, wait, what did she say? So just, you don't have to do that. Just think about that. You don't have to do any, whatever. But I'm going to put the photos on the Google Drive, and I'm also going to send you a link to the video recording of tonight's Zoom class.
Great.
Okay. And yeah, I think that's it. So, and then anything that you make throughout the week, once you have access to the Google Drive, I think you could start adding your own images to it. So see if you can do that. But if you can't, you can just email them to me and I will add them. And yes, and next week is waxing. So make sure that you have I'll send you an email too, but make sure you have your hot plates on 200. You have like a nice clean aluminum tray, and we're going to use wax medium. So you can have Encausticos, you have any brand of wax medium. And that's beadwax plus resin. And some brushes, and some nice Hake brushes or bristle brushes. Okay, so your options for brushes too are, I think I told you all to buy Hake brushes, which are these beautiful brushes. This one has wax on it, sorry. Brushes don't stay new around here for very long. But you could also use these cute hardware store bristle brushes. They just have to be organic. And you can give the bristle brushes haircuts, which is now my new thing. So they come very uneven, but they're cheaper, and you can probably go get to your hardware store. So if you have to buy these, it's fine, and then we can just give them a haircut.
Good idea.
Yeah, it is a good idea. And I actually saw it on YouTube. Somebody was using this, and they just wanted really short. They wanted the bristles just really short.
Yeah.
So they just trimmed right down almost to the band, and it just completely changed the shape of the brush stroke, which is cool. I mean, you can trim your Hake brushes too. I mean, you can trim any paintbrush, honestly, to make it. Like I cut that foam brush. I was like, oh shoot, it's too big for. Oh, sorry. It's skinny now. Skinny foam brush. Okay. All right. Good night. I'm gonna go.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Good night. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was great to see you all. Thank you so much. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.